my god, I have one battery left, one bar on my camera. I can finish this video, it's all good. Hello my lovelies, Fallon here, and I'm sorry that I didn't do an April wrap-up. I've been in exams, and I'm still in exams, and I'm still trying to get over a cold, so I don't sound so great, but I figured that I would do a little comic book haul and review of the comic books that I've read in the past month because I have just finished all of them. There were some major sales from Chapters Indigo Coles, which is the Canadian book company like Barnes & Noble's, and I was able to get a ton of new comic books for like less than $5 each. The very first comic that I got and have read in the past while is Earth 1 Wonder Woman, and is volume 1, and it's hardcover, and it's so nice looking, and I was so thrilled with this comic, like this volume of comics, because I didn't really expect it after everything the New 52 has done recently. They haven't been treating their female characters the best. Wonder Woman didn't get her own solo comics in the New 52, and it was often when she was in it or other characters were in it, they were kind of dehumanized and their outfits became a little more revealing or whatever than would make sense. So I was hoping this would change the direction, and even though this cover is, you know, not great, the entire plot of this story was so good. And it was so nice and refreshing to see a retelling of her origin story from Themyscira. The story is typically set in the 1950s-ish, like 40s, 50s, World War II era, generally somewhere around there, and as a guy who crashes bands and becomes part of their society. And they went with that sort of, except it's in modern times, and the representation in this book was so good. The art was stunning to look at. Like, I've never been so thrilled about the art. Like, this is the first page of this comic, and look at how great that art is. It was consistently good throughout. The story was great, and I really loved how the characters were depicted. Kind of did talk about how they were like women were lovers with each other and everything like that, and they never have touched that in any of the volumes that I've read, at least from Wonder Woman, and I was so thrilled about that in this book. Everything was so beautifully written. This was like the best origin story that there could have possibly been for Wonder Woman. I loved everything about this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because there was some artwork that was drawn like this, a little bit dehumanizing, but the diversity in this book was so wonderful to see, and I was so happy with the direction that DC is going, as long as they continue with Grant Morrison, Yannick Paquette, and Nathan Fairbairn writing and drawing and everything. It'll go in a beautiful direction, so I am hoping that they continue with this style, with this type, with Wonder Woman being a very independent woman, because she is, and as long as it continues, I will definitely be continuing on this series, and I fully recommend it. Next I have a series from Image Comics, Saga Volume 1, and I really enjoyed this entire series, and particularly the first one. It was a beautiful start to the series. The ideas were so refreshing, and the artwork is so detailed. Like, I felt so spoiled just looking at some of this artwork, because I have like, DC gave me that, and now Image Comics is giving me this, and I just don't want to read Marvel anymore because Marvel sometimes blurs out faces and doesn't put as much detail in every panel. And now I'm like, I love all of this detail work that is in each and every panel. I've also never read a comic that is fantasy based more rather than like superheroes or sci-fi, and this was very fantasy with sci-fi elements mixed in, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was a beautiful first volume to start with. Brown, an absolutely amazing read. The story was so interesting. Some of the stuff was maybe a little bit mature or whatever in the read. There was like some mild nudity, I guess, in it, but it wasn't to the point of where like you were shocked by it, whereas other comics, not in this series, but other comics that I've read have had you shocked by it. And so there wasn't shock factor, it was more just like to push the story along. And it worked really well. I really love that it's being narrated by their daughter Hazel, the baby or whatever, as she's older, and I thought that was a really interesting way to write a story, because you know that she's gonna grow up and you know you kind of know what's gonna happen, but not to the point where you're bored. Saga Volume 2, and this was still like good, and the plot was really good, and the art is still absolutely spectacular to look at. There was a little bit more confusion when I was reading this, I'm not gonna lie. Some parts were just kind of strange. They do get explained a little bit more in the 3rd volume. So I only gave this 4 to 5 stars just because when I read it I was like, I don't really know what's happening, which, I mean, I am okay with that, but at some points I would have liked a little bit more description, a little more backstory, a little more narration. There just really wasn't a whole lot of that in this, and there could have been more. But the characterization was, again, great, and I love the artwork, and we always get the variant covers in the back, which are always stunning to look at. I love variant covers that they attach, Image Comics attaches. Just absolutely beautiful. A little bit later, but I'm just going to continue on with the Saga series. So I have Saga Volume 3. And this one, consistently good, consistently carried on with the series. The characters were beautiful. There was a little bit of death and destruction in the series, but it really fit nicely. I don't really have a whole lot other than that to say just for this one, just because it was good. There's definitely some diversity in the characters. I mean, you have a lot of people of color, or characters of color, I guess, in it. You have homosexuality that is clearly there, and you have a lot of different bits and pieces that are in it, and I absolutely love that about this comic series, because it just made things so much better than just the story of one person. You get so many stories together, and it fit really nicely. 5 stars, again, because it was also beautifully written. Artwork is consistently amazing. No complaints there. And the last volume of the Saga series that I read was Saga Volume 4, and I know that Volume 5 is out and I can read it, but it's just like I'm gonna wait a little bit. This was somewhat upsetting. Some of the things didn't make a whole lot of sense. I did like the cliffhanger at the end. There was a little bit of a cliffhanger, and that was really good, really helped with the series. I really love the dad. A lot of plot lines all interwoven together, and I feel like it works really well for this series. So this was a solid continuation. I gave it 4 to 5 stars just because I don't feel like it's getting consistently better. It's getting consistently more confusing. So I'm hoping that things will start to get tied up maybe a little bit in the next volume, just because there's so much happening at one point of time that you're like, I have no idea what's going on at some points, particularly near the end. And I don't think you're supposed to, but I feel like things could have been explained just a little bit better to give it that 5 out of 5 stars. But it was still a very good series, and I definitely recommend the Saga volumes, or the separate comics. Hoping to pick up the 5th volume maybe next month. I don't think I'm going to be getting to it this month just because I have a lot of books that I want to read, and I know there's not going to be any sales for comics for a while, so just gonna wait. I'll pick up my comics later when they go on sale, or if I can find them on in-stock trades, which is in the doobly-doo down below. So the next series that I read by Image Comics was The Wicked and the Divine. I read Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. So Volume 1 just explains some general stuff. It was confusing at times. Developed okay, like it wasn't spectacularly amazing, but the characterization was really good, and the different gods and goddesses that are in the story was also very interesting. And I feel like the Morrigan is haunting me in books that I read, because I like read a book that had the Morrigan in it, and the Morrigan is a character in this series, and I feel like I'm being haunted. I probably wouldn't have understood it as well as I did if I wasn't super into world mythology. I have a world mythology book that I've read. It's really good. And so if I hadn't read that, I would have probably been way more confused than I was. But if you have some knowledge of mythology, and not just like Greek and Roman mythology, you need mythology from like around the world, then I would definitely recommend reading it, because it is very good. It is very good. So all of the gods were depicted exactly how I figured they would act in our world, so I thought that everyone did their research really well. The plot went exactly the direction that I was hoping that it would go within it, and so I give it 4 out of 5 stars because it wasn't absolutely spectacular, but it was a really good beginning of the series. A good way to start it off, I guess. So I would recommend picking this up if you can for cheap. I mean, I got it for less than the $10 asking price. I think I got it for like $4 or $5, something like that, because it was a huge sale going on. And so if you can pick it up for cheap, I definitely recommend it. Even if you can't, it's $10. It's good. It's worth it. I just don't know if you'll be upset with how the series goes, so I'll tell you. The next one in the series is The Wicked and the Divine, Pandemonium, and this continues with our narrator, narrating, I guess, the girl we find out at the very end. There are some spoilery stuff, I guess, so she has some stuff going on, and it's very cool. Very interesting. I thought this was an absolutely spectacular sequel. It lived up to all of my hopes and dreams and expectations in every way. Basically said that this trade was so good, and the characters were just plain wow. Just wow. When I read this, I was like, I need the sequel right now. I need to know what happens to our main character, because there is a major cliffhanger and ends with a huge bang. So yes, this is a very good one. The first 2 were absolutely spectacular, but commercial suicide. This trade was awful. Like, I gave it 2 stars. I do not give many books 2 stars. Generally it's like 3 stars is my average for books. If I don't really like them, I'm like, oh, it's still okay. This was terrible. The art is completely different in every single volume because they bring in a ton of guest artists. And I just want to show you, like, the difference between the art. So here is the old art. Stunning, beautiful, great differences. And then you have every single thing is different art. Like, you have this, which is okay, but then you also have was absolutely horrible. It doesn't look like the characters in any way, shape, or form. And I think that if you left the art similar, I would have liked it a lot better. But because the art is so different and so less iconic, I don't, like, we changed narration, we changed art, everything's totally different. Nothing that you need in this volume anyway. So I'm just, like, if you want to read this series, just skip to volume 4 when it comes out, because this trade was a waste of money. Doesn't matter I paid like $6 for it. This was not worth it. This trade was absolutely terrible. Like, oh, I'm like ready to move it to 1 star now just because it was so bad. One of my favorite good read comics about this was, The Wicked and the Divine, I loved you and now I hate you, which kind of references some stuff that happens in the stories and everything, but it was just, just skip volume 3 of this trade release because it was not good. The novel that I picked up and read in the past month was Volume 1, The Delirium of Hope. And this was the only one that I didn't buy on sale. It was a little bit more, but I wanted to pick it up for a while now, just because I really love the premise of it, and I don't know how I feel about it. I think I'm gonna end up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It's just, the art was confusing. If the art of the cover was what I was hoping to get, what I expected to get, and you do get that in some scenes, mostly underwater scenes, so you get stuff like that, absolutely beautiful, but then you have on the very next page something that looks like this, like just a lot of red. There's a lot of red and oranges in this graphic novel. Based upon, I'm guessing where it's set, like the world's gonna explode, so everything's red and orange basically to show like danger, 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 and I get it. It's okay. I don't know how I feel about it. Like, some things are really good, some things were really bad. I just in the direction that I was hoping. It didn't explain what was happening other than saying, oh, the sun is expanding, it's going to consume everything. Okay, so what year are we in? Like, when is this set? What technology do we have? Why are things like this? Like, there's this Helms thing that isn't explained whatsoever, and only this one family can use it, the Kane family, I guess, and that's like the all-powerful thing, I guess? I have no idea. It was it was weird. Nothing was really explained. The mom was the main character, which I kind of liked. I thought that was cool. And she was probably the best character in it because she was a badass. But that was basically it about this entire series that I liked, was the mother. Like, the kids didn't make any sense. The dad was dead in like the first 2 chapters, but we didn't find out until later in the book. Like, I don't know why. Like, things weren't, there was no like climax build of it. And then there was just like some crazy stuff where it was like, just kill everybody off, and it was like, what? Like, I didn't understand most of this. So like 2.5 stars maybe out of 5. Like, it was, I wouldn't recommend picking it up just based upon like the art. I felt kind of cheated, and it was kind of like if you're reading the new Miss Marvel comics by Marvel, the art was similar to that, but like the dream sequence scenes from those, if you remember those at all, or if you've read them, it's just like a lot of one color with like slight variations to the color, and that was basically it. So I don't know, maybe if the art had been a little bit different I would have liked it more, but also like the general plot was just kind of confusing. So I don't think I'm going to continue with this series at this point. It was okay, it wasn't jaw-droppingly amazing in any way, shape, or form. As always, my name is Fallon. You guys are absolutely amazing. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me!